Yeah, I want to just start this off by thanking everybody for all the support. Uh, it's awesome. Here we got this vintage gold plated. I think it's a 10K gold plated Waltham. Uh, it's fully wound up. The hour hand's moving around, so that's good. The minute hands fell off. This pop this case back off here, and let's see. Yeah, it's stuck in there, so use this plastic cover on these hands to try not to scratch the dial. I think I'm going to order a better set of levers because this set here is not polished enough. I've tried polishing them, but it still sometimes scratches dials, and I hate that about it. So these hands look like they are heat blued. That's pretty cool. This second hand on the 6 o'clock position. So this this movement here is stuck in the case, which I guess it just is kind of like the case back and the movement holder. That's pretty cool, I guess. So here we got a date from a service, which is July of 2011, Waltham, 10K gold filled. And I didn't notice this until after we were editing. This, look at the serial number. It's all sixes and 19. That's pretty crazy. So to get this dial off, there's these dial screws on the side of the movement. You take both of those loose. I don't usually take them out and pop the dial off. The dial's in pretty good shape. So this is under the dial side here. The first thing I'm going to do is take this dial spacer off. And like the last video, it's a cowboy hat. This is the hour wheel coming off now. Check out the teeth. And so I do a lot of that inspection in this video. I try to not cut a lot of the stuff out because I'd seen some people saying they wanted to see more. Let's go ahead and blow some air on this balance and see. Well, there's something going on with that. I'm not sure what it is yet, but we will find out. Let's go ahead and get this wind out of this so we can work on it safely without anything exploding. And it's not wanting to unwind. There we go. It kind of happened quickly, but it didn't really want to unwind there. So we'll go ahead and get this balance out of here first. See if we can see something going on with it. Even with better tweezers, I still drop everything. So all these bridges and cocks and everything have this little dimple on the side that you can just get your screwdriver under to just pop them up out. And that makes it way easier. I mean, that's really the only way to do it, is to just slightly push that up, and then you can grab it with your tweezers. So let's see what we got here. Try and set this into its pivot. Yeah, it looks a little off center. I guess we'll see. It's definitely off center a little bit. So I guess we'll go ahead and get this ratchet wheel off of here. And this ratchet wheel is screwed down to the barrel through the arbor. It is what allows the watch to stay wound. This one here is the crown wheel. It's what winds it through the crown. And then you have the click down there on the left by my thumb. That's what kind of is why it's a ratchet wheel. It's like a ratcheting mechanism that holds the wind. And the barrel arbor's got a square that it lines up in the center hole in that ratchet wheel and doesn't allow the spring to unwind unless it's through the train of wheels. So just like everything else, pulling all these off, checking them out, get that bushing out of there, for that crown wheel. Go ahead and pop this ratchet wheel up. Looks like it's in good shape. So I lost this thing like 2 or 3 times trying to put it back together. This little click spring here, that those things fly everywhere all the time. That's a pretty different design from what I've seen. Later on in the video, I thought that was rubbing on the bottom of the ratchet wheel, keeping the amplitude low, but didn't end up being what it was. So this is me pulling that crown stem out, and you got to do that from this side to be able to pull it out. That little lever is clamped from this side, and that screw actually doesn't hold this barrel bridge on. These other 3 screws here hold this barrel bridge on. This movement's 750B, and when I looked for parts for it, there were plenty all over the place. So this is a pretty good one if you were wanting to pick up and try to learn. They're cheap and they're plentiful. Now these screws are really long. I've noticed while working on this, they're longer than normal. I don't know if it's the style. It's like I almost want to say like stacked plate, but it's not quite that, I guess. So back again on these little divots to pop these bridges up. And as you can see, that screw that holds the stem in doesn't hold the plate. And there you can see the square on the top of the arbor, on top of the barrel. Let's go ahead and get this clutch wheel out of here. And it engages with this winding pinion to make a ratcheting for winding, so you can wind it forward, but when you pull the crown backwards, it ratchets. And that also allows you to pull the stem out through the setting lever and set the hand date. So we'll go ahead and get these screws out of this main bridge here that holds all the train wheels in. And like I said before, these screws are very long. I'm hoping that I got this new laptop that my videos will increase in quality. My audio and my editing, I'm hoping that all of that will get better as I learn to use this new laptop. My other laptop was old, really old, and it just wasn't cutting it. So I'm still working on learning the names of all these wheels. So I believe this is the 4th wheel here coming out. We'll go ahead and inspect all of these and make sure we don't have anything bent. Pivots look good. Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay, now this is the escape wheel. We're going to check the teeth on this for wear. It'll wear against the pallet stones on the pallet fork. Check the pivots. They all look good. 3rd wheel. Same thing. Now I am a pretty new, I've been doing this for about a year and a half or so. So I'm still learning some of the names of the parts. I take a lot of pictures. Somebody was asking me how I know where to put all this stuff. I cut all that out, but I'm looking at pictures when I'm reassembling this stuff. I take a lot of pictures before I take anything apart, and while I'm putting it back together, I am on my phone looking at pictures of how it goes back. Let's go ahead and get this pallet cock out of here. This is a cock because it has 1 screw. I've never ran into any of these bent before, but I've read on other people having a lot of issues with the one screw cocks being bent. Let's check out these stones on this pallet fork, and they look pretty good. You know, to be honest, the whole inside of this watch looks really good. I'm not sure what's keeping it from moving. Go ahead and get this barrel out, and to get this plate out of this barrel, you have to press. You hold this side of the barrel like this. You press on the arbor, and it'll pop the plate out. A lot of the times when you do that, the mainspring doesn't pop out like it did. But so it doesn't explode. Okay, so it doesn't explode. We'll go ahead and unwind it by hand like that, and you can look and see. Yeah, this is pretty dirty. Okay, I'll set that off to the side here, and we'll go ahead and start taking apart this in the front. This is a setting lever spring. It holds the position of the crown. This one is the minute wheel. Turns the cannon pinion, and that in turn turns the minutes hand. Now you can see when I'm shining the light on this that something's wrong there. That's off color right there. So what we find is that we got a tooth bent. You see it there? That tooth there's not flat. It is bent. Now that probably happened when somebody was putting this back together and put the cannon pinion on and didn't have the gears aligned, and they bent that. So I'll try my best to repair this and see what happens. So this is a little staking set I got, and I'm gonna set this minute wheel down here in this hole that just barely fits in. Use this punch here, rounded, and then flatten that out. Now I hit it a little bit too hard. You just barely want to tap it. I hit it way too hard, and more than once. So they're a little flat, but they are aligned. Okay, let's go ahead and set this on there and see if we have any alignment issues with the cannon pinion. So this is connecting the setting wheel and the cannon pinion. So there is a little bit of friction there. That's not good. That's no good situation. So what I'm going to do is take this diamond file and try to widen the gap between these teeth for better fitment. And you know, this is a trial and error. I don't show all of it, but you know, I'm taking this off, filing on it, putting it on there, checking, basically checking the backlash, and then taking it off, resetting it, taking off a little bit at a time just to check. So here we go. We're going to put this back on there and check it. And use this little pointer to hold pressure on this. It made it a lot easier. Okay. So there's where the damage was at. And it seems like it's still sticking. So I'm back to the file. Now you don't want to take too much off. Just enough to make it not have too much tension there. Let's see if that worked. Seems like it did. Go to the setting wheel. Yeah. Okay. We may be in business there with that. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this setting wheel out of there. Now this is something different. This yoke and yoke spring are one piece. They're not separate. kind of a cool design, really. I haven't seen one like this before. It's a little tricky just because I hadn't seen it to get it off of there and to put it back on. But typically these is a spring it's separate, and those springs like to fly across the room. That's pretty cool. So I tried to get this cannon pinion off here, and this was the best option I had. Was to set pressure on it, grab it, and pull it out. So that is the center wheel there. Typically that will go through the cannon pinion and drive the seconds hand. Check out these pivots. Looking for any damaged teeth. It looks good. Alright. We'll leave the setting lever in there for now. I'll flip this thing over. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and drop these into these baskets for cleaning. Put all the bridges into this one. Close it up. I'm still waiting on some 3D printed parts for my cleaning machine. Once I get that, I will make a video showing it. I'll drop all these wheels and everything else pretty much into this basket here. A lot of stuff. Alright. So now I put these into mason jars with my L&R cleaning solutions and rinsing solutions. Now this is one dip that I use for hairsprings typically. I just drop this in here and blow some air on it to agitate it. This is my setup currently. L&R rinse, L&R clean, go through and rinse and clean all of these, clean and then rinse. This escape wheel was stuck in here, so I got that on video, trying to get that out without breaking anything. So I set these onto a piece of paper, blow them with the air blower, let them dry. So while those are drying, we will go ahead and oil up and lubricate this mainspring. And I think this is 8200. So just basically put some on your fingers and run it down the length of the spring to keep it from getting any kind of corrosion. And this is a cheap set of mainspring winders. They actually work pretty decent. I may end up buying a more expensive set later on, but so far these are working for me. So what you want to do is pick one. So you're going to need that piece for sure. We're going to want to pick one that looks like it'll fit the barrel. So we'll check, and that one does not fit the barrel. And that piece that pulls out of it, the little rod in the center, you want that to fit where the barrel arbor would go inside the spring. It acts as the locking mechanism for the barrel arbor there. So this one's gonna fit here, and I can't see what the numbers on there are, but you may be able to. So basically what you want to do is get this little bar out of the center of it and make sure you have it on there the right direction. I went and looked at a picture to see which way this needs to go. And this winds in reverse to what it should be in the barrel. So you set this in here, line up the little mark where the spring goes so you don't break anything, and then you start winding. Now I would be careful once you get to the end. You don't want to break this catch off here. So what I do is I hold tension on it with my thumb, grab it with tweezers, pull it up in there, wind it a little bit more to make sure it's in there, and then let the wind out. You want to be careful taking this little bar out of here because the mainspring will fly out of there. And just like that, you've got a wound mainspring. Now it is backwards from what it should be until you drop it down in there. And once you push it in there, it should be the correct orientation. And just like that, the mainspring is back in. Now, do you see anything wrong? I'll give you a hint. It's not the mainspring orientation. It takes me a little bit to figure out what's going on. Go ahead and oil this up here. Get this plate back on here. Husky hair out. And it just really doesn't want to line up. So we're gonna force it to line up. Don't ever force anything to line up. Okay, well, that looks normal. Everything's seated. Cool. Let's go ahead and put some oil on here. This one's 90-10. It goes on all the jewels here. And actually shouldn't have oiled that one there. I think this is D5. I know it's just a slightly thicker grease or slightly thicker oil than the 90-10. It's in my oiler stand. I'm not 100% sure what that one is. So for some reason that barrel didn't want to sit down in there right, but we'll keep moving on. Get this escape wheel lined up into this pivot. And I had quite a bit of issue lining these pivots up. More than normal. Okay. Get the second wheel. Third wheel. This one's the fourth wheel. Yeah. There we go. And as you can see, that's kind of how they connect, you know. It's almost reduction. Well, it is reduction. You know, the big part of the gear attaches to the small part of the next gear, and so on. Now, this is the center wheel, and there's some more husky hair there. Go ahead and see about pulling that out. No? Okay, we're going to take the wheel back out. All right. Starting to see the issue I have? You will. All right. So for some reason, this center wheel here doesn't want to sit on there right. But we'll go ahead and sit it down. Start setting this train wheel main bridge back on. Try and line up the screw holes first after you set it down. And then I'm in here just messing with these, trying to line these pivots up. And I'm like, man, this center wheel just keeps falling. What is the deal? Check it out. See the issue? The barrel arbor was put in upside down. So that fits much better now. The barrel arbor was put upside down, so it was causing the barrel to be upside down. To have the square part up to sit in the pivot correctly, the barrel was upside down, so the teeth weren't lining up with that gear. And actually, that took me a while to figure out. I didn't realize that I had done that. It just went together difficult, and I was like, well, let's start looking at this. And you make some mistakes, but I wanted to put that in here just to be, just to show. I still, even though it's correct now, had some difficulty lining these pivots up. Sometimes these bridges just drop right into place. Sometimes they will fight you the whole time. Eventually, as you see, I'm just messing with all of these slightly, pressing on the bridge and just trying to get one of these pivots to line up. And once you have one lined up, the rest will come easier. Okay. Try and smack on the table a little bit. An up close look, you can see. And that one's pretty close. And smacking it on the table did get us one to line up. So now that we've got one lined up, let's keep messing with this. And it looks like it's pretty lined up. Press it down. Just got the escape wheel left. If you can hear my dogs in the background, I'm sorry. They're all over the place. All right. Put some pressure on this, move this around. I can see it trying to get in there. There we go. And I left that real time just to show, it's not always drop it right into place and go. Sometimes you'll spend hours messing with stuff and then you'd make a video on it and it'll look like it took you 30 seconds. But in reality, it took you a long time. Now, as you get better, as I get better, it may be that you can just drop it right into place. Some stuff that used to take me hours now really does only take me 30 seconds. But some stuff that takes other people 30 seconds will still take me hours. So here I'm just making sure everything's still spinning before I tighten these all down. And I've got motion through the barrel all the way down the gear train, so we'll go ahead and tighten these all down. Now, you'll want to lubricate this exit stone on the pallet fork. That lubricates the escapement, keeps it from wearing out. They got like a 9415, I believe, is the oil you use for that. You can use 9010 for that also, I believe. You can get online and look at a chart and see. It'll show you what all the oils are, what they're used for, and what can be used in their place. So go ahead and line this cock back up. Press it down. Let's see if we can get this pivot to line up in there. Yep. All right. Press it down. Pivot's lined up. Good to go. Just making sure by moving it back and forth that there's no bind before I put the screw in, because you don't want to break any of these pivots off. If it wasn't exactly lined up and you tighten one of these screws down, it would absolutely break one of the pivots. I think you might fill it in the screw before you broke one. I've never broke one that way, but I bet you could fill it while tightening it. That something wasn't right. So to line this bridge up, which this one actually does just kind of fall into place, but it's only got the arbor and that center wheel pivot. And I guess the setting lever screw also. Just go ahead and press it down. Shake on the barrel, and that is pretty tight actually. I don't know if that's been repaired or if it's just in that good a shape, but that is like as tight as something you would see brand new, I'm sure. All of these screws were the same, so I don't have to worry about where they go as far as this specific bridge. I mean, they're different amongst the bridges, but these are the same on this bridge. Sometimes you'll run into one of the bridges will be, or one of the screws will be a different length on the others. Some more husky hair. Let's see. Yeah, we got motion. Everything's still working. Cool. Now this is, I want to say, the D5 again. And I'm just putting it on this metal on metal contact. Anything that's metal on metal will get that thicker oil. So I'm in here where this click spring slides back and forth. Go ahead and put this bushing back on here for this crown wheel. And as you can see, you know, that thing's just wanting to go all over the place. It's one of those things. Yeah, it seems like that would just drop right into place, but it doesn't. Get this crown wheel back on here and oil it some more. Metal on metal contact, so it gets the thicker oil. Put some under where the head of the screw will go, so it will ride smoothly. You don't want that wearing out. So this was actually the first try putting this spring back in here, but as I took it apart and was troubleshooting issues I had, this thing went flying a couple times. This seems to be the best method here, putting it back in. Get that click back in there. And you can see that I didn't put it, the click's in there right, but the spring isn't holding it back. So what I'm going to end up doing here is holding pressure on this spring and picking it up over the click, which isn't great. I should have took the click back out and put it in that way instead of trying to bend this spring back. Well, I didn't really damage the spring, but I could have. I should have just took the click back out and aligned it properly. Almost every watch that I work on, I learn. I guess the spring came back out. That could have went flying, so it's a good thing I had pressure there. So that time I lined it up, and I'll put pressure back on it, and we'll pull it back down in. It's all good. Get this ratchet wheel back in here. Now to line this ratchet wheel up, you have to line this square hole up with the square part of the arbor. You have to line up the teeth from the ratchet and the crown wheel, and then you have to pull this spring tension on this click back. Once you do all those, you can oil the friction points, drop the screw in, should be good. Now, this is 90-10 to oil all these pivots with. Now, you may want to use something different on some of these others. Higher tension spots, but pretty much if it has a jewel, I use 90-10 on it. Flip this thing over. You can see that wear pattern where that tooth was bent. I'll go ahead and drop some oil on that. Oil all these metal contact points. And I come back in later and hit this with some 94, was it 9501? The blue grease, the blue thicker grease. You won't see that until the movement's almost all the way back together. But I was waiting on it. I had ordered some and it took a while to get here. These new oilers are awesome. I bought a set of Burgeon oilers and they're way better than the cheap ones I had. Let me tell you. Too much oil there. Go ahead and wipe that off there. Get this yoke and yoke spring back in here, but that's got to wait because I have to put the wheels back in. Now, this piece here is where the crown stem goes through, and it slides back and forth on that spring-loaded yoke. And it ratchets with this, and that allows you to wind the watch, rotate it the opposite direction freely, and then when you pull it out, it slides that clutch the opposite direction and engages with the setting wheel, and then allows you to set the hands. I can see why they separated these yoke and yoke spring. This is a pretty cool design, but if it broke, you'd have to replace the whole thing. As where, the other is two pieces, so if one broke, you don't have to replace one. Although this is less likely to fly across the room. This is that setting wheel I was talking about. This is that wheel we repaired. That's the minute wheel that engages with the cannon pinion. It's the setting lever spring. And it has two positions, winding and setting, on the setting lever that engages with the crown stem. I have a new set of screwdrivers coming in too. Now these are the cheap screwdrivers with nice tips. They have the Burgeon tips, but they're starting to get worn out, and I'm going to buy a sharpening stone also, but I bought a new set of screwdrivers that are better than the ones I have now. They're still not the highest quality, but they'll be good for me. Now, here's what I'm saying about this cannon pinion. See how it could bend one of those teeth pretty easily if you didn't have it lined up properly. This is the other side of the barrel arbor, getting some oil there. It's a little bit too much. Wipe it off. I come back and get the rest of that. So you got to line these teeth up here before you press down on it. And if you didn't do that, it would bend one of these teeth down. And I believe that's what happened with this watch. And I don't know if that's why it wasn't running or if not. It very well possibly could be part of the reason. So this is the screw on the other side that holds that stem in. That screw is actually what holds the setting lever on. Making sure everything works. Now I come back and I lubricate and grease all of that works there. Now this is the jewel on the other side of the balance, I believe. And we've got to take this apart and drop that top part down into some one dip. Oil this jewel. Once this is clean and dry, just drop it back down in there. And that'll hold the oil there, no matter the position of the watch. Okay. Flip this over. We're going to go ahead and try and put the balance back in. Flick this, make sure we've got power, and it looks good. Looks like we got plenty of power. And everything's working. The watch has a full wind currently. Drop this in, make sure that impulse jewel sets with the fork on the pallet. It's not wanting to kick up. I'm trying to spin this around and see. Okay. Something's definitely going on with this. And look, this hairspring is overlapped itself. Now, this thing's tiny. If you haven't ever messed with the hairspring before, it's crazy small. I try my best to get this one fixed. So here I'm holding it in tweezers under my microscope, and I have this broken, bent, smallest oiler I have to try and slightly mess with this spring to get it out from underneath this. Okay, alright, I got it out from underneath that, but it still looks a little messed up. Let's see what's going on there. And that thing has a nasty bend in it. And it makes the whole spring off center. Okay. Let's go ahead and drop it back in there and see what it does now that it's not overlapping itself. All tangled. Let's see if we can get it to run. Blow some air on it. It's still not really wanting to move. Make sure we got this pivot lined up. Well, it's moving better than it was, but still something's not right. And you can see that there's a pretty nasty kink there. So let's hold some pressure on this cock and pull this hairspring and balance assembly apart. Now you have to do this to oil this jewel on the top anyway. Well, technically you can hold the balance up and then stick an oiler through there and not touch the spring, and you can oil it that way. Not great. But here you can see this stud in the center is way off. So I'm going to try and straighten some of this back out. And this was a trial and error, you know. Bend it slightly, put it back together, test it. If it doesn't work, take it back apart, bend it slightly. And I probably did this 5 or 6 times. But I ended up only showing you a couple. And that's because what happens. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and, get this stud back down into its position. Very difficult, tedious, very delicate, I guess not tedious, delicate work there. To get that stud back lined and get this screw in here. Which the screwdriver isn't sharp enough to get into it, which is part of the issue. Alright, so now I need to get this spring back into these little posts here and see what we got. Well, it's still springing. There's still a pretty nasty kink there. I should have repaired that on the last time I took it apart. So let's go ahead and pull it back off of there and see what happens. Oh, okay, well it fell. Well, not only did it fall, the whole stud broke off of the hairspring. So this one's toast. There's no fixing that. Well, no fixing that for me. So this is a new part here. This part came off of a donor watch. I bought a whole movement for cheap. So I took this balance assembly out and dropped it in there. Let's see what we got. After some messing with it, I didn't have to do a whole lot. I got it to run. Now that amplitude is pretty low. Let's see if that gets any better when we put this screw in there. Tighten this screw down. Maybe pull that cock up a little bit and pull some pressure off that pivot to increase the amplitude if it's not sitting perfect. Yeah, that seemed to do the trick. Okay. Let's go ahead and try and regulate this. Now, this is the best thing I can do is currently until I get a dedicated time grapher. To regulate this movement, I have to use my phone. So I just put a screen recording on here of after I had the regulation done. Now, this is that Waltham running here live. And this is what I ended up getting here. 268 degrees of amplitude. Seems like it's running a little slow. Well, we got 0.3 beat error, 0.2 beat error, 0.1 beat error. So we ended up getting, a 1 to 3 beat error, 7 seconds a day slow, 268 amplitude. I'm pretty happy with that. This is that 9501 grease I was telling you about, where I came back in here and greased all this works here. This stuff's pretty thick. It won't move. That's some high friction, high wear spots. Even though I've never seen any of these worn out before, I could imagine they would, because that's where you're winding and setting the watch constantly. Now, actually, I'm going to go ahead and take this back apart, and that, because I have a donor movement, that minutes wheel that I repaired, I'm just going to go ahead and replace it. So this is a replacement wheel. So even though the one that I repaired was working, I'm going to just put a good one in there. And That seemed like the best decision to me. Go ahead and make sure all these pivots are greased up. Put the hour wheel back on, line it up with the minutes wheel. All right, cowboy hat's back on. When I was learning that was something that stuck with me. I can't remember who said it first, but you know, that dial spacer, I had put them on upside down before, and you know, the proper way is like the brim of the hat. Let's get this dial back in here and get these screws down. That'll hold tension on these here. Let's see, we still got amplitude, still running good. I like to check that after I put the dial on, because sometimes even the hands will rub on something and you just never know. There we go. Now you want to align that to the 12. So this one doesn't have a date function, so it doesn't matter where you put it as long as you put it on the hour hand on first. And then I align it with the 12. Make sure it's not rubbing on anything. Now that it's aligned at 12, now the minutes hand does matter. You want to put the minutes hand exactly on 12 with the exactly on 12 hour hand. That'll make sure that your minutes and hour hands are aligned properly while this watch runs. Now these hands are heat blued, and that's very cool. You know, 10K gold filled case, heat blued hands. I'm not sure of the year on this watch. And now here we go, just some slight pressure on this minute hand so I can align it. Now I'll use the end of this press tool I have to realign it back on the 12, and then I'll give it a good solid push. Spin it around, make sure nothing's rubbing, nothing on the dial, make sure the hands aren't touching. Make sure all the hours are lining up properly, and they are, so that's good. There we go. And all the way around. Nothing's touching. All right. Now it doesn't have to be left at 12 or any specific hour to put the seconds hand back on. The seconds hand doesn't matter as long as you get it in there. It will run. And the seconds hand's not going to rub on anything because it's separate. It's harder than it looks. This little seconds hand is tiny. So what I'm trying to do is just align it with this pivot. And there I go. All right. Press it down. Give this watch a wind and see what it's doing. Clean it off. It's running. Nice. Pretty good amplitude. Clean this case up. There we go. Now this thing's running. Now, I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this watch yet. I think I'm going to keep it. That's why I don't have a strap on there yet. I don't know what strap I want to put on it. And this may end up being too small for my liking. It uses a 16 millimeter strap, and I've got a pretty large wrist. But it did turn out nice. It runs good. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, you're definitely going to want to stay and check out the next video. It's going to be really cool. I appreciate all the support. Thank you.